Hello, everyone, and welcome to this spoiler review for The Mandalorian, brought to you by the Geek Buddies. Hey! We're jumping in things today and talking about this episode, Guns for Hire. This is a very Mandalorian-centric episode, and you'd be like, well, is it? Well, it's called The Mandalorian. Yeah, but we've been kind of going on a lot of tangents on this one. And this one does feel also like another one of these missions for hire that we've been used to seeing in seasons past with The Mandalorian. And we've got some guest stars in this one. Jack Black, Christopher Lloyd, and LIZZO coming in. And we get a little commentary, a little more commentary on droid culture, which I think is a really interesting part of this episode as well. The Darksaber figures heavily. And we have conversations about who's going to lead what in the Mandalorians. And we get that shot of Bo-Katan holding the Darksaber once again. So, and this one is directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. And we're going to jump into all of this thing. And by the way, this is a spoiler review, so hopefully you've seen the episode. But let's introduce ourselves. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm a television actor and an animation writer, where you can see mine and the absent Mr. Vogel, some of our current work on Netflix right now with Strawberry Shortcake Berry in the Big City seasons 1 and 2.
Yeah, for those of you wondering, Michael is unfortunately out today because he is out of town working on a project. He will be back, of course, for our main show, which we'll be doing. If you're watching this when we're dropping this on a Thursday morning here on the West Coast, at least Thursday morning, we will be doing a live show at 11 a.m. tomorrow with the Geek Buddies, with me, Mike, and Shannon. So come and join us for the live show talking about all the big news in the world of geekery. But yes, today we're talking about Guns for Hire. I gave the basic premise of this one. We have the Mandalorian and Bo-Katan heading on over to PLUS 15. They want to kind of find the fleet that had left Bo, the Night Owls, and all of them that had left. We see them have their opening scene here with these two star-crossed lovers who can't quite put it together yet because the time isn't right. And we head to PLUS 15. We find out that PLUS 15 is having these issues with these battle droids that are malfunctioning. We get Mando essentially working out his droids issues for a little bit and eventually finding out what's going on here. We get mentions of Dooku. Christopher Lloyd figures heavily into all of this. And then at the end, we have Bo-Katan fighting Axe there for control of these Mandalorians and finding out that she does, in effect, even though it's taken a couple episodes for Mando to come around on this, deserve to wield the Darksaber all of a sudden. So a very interesting episode. Your thoughts on this one, Shannon, as we have crossed the halfway point of this season of The Mandalorian. So what are your thoughts here on this?
It was a solid okay. There were absolutely parts that I did like. The whole idea of Din and Bo-Katan going on this sort of noir mystery to, find out, why these droids are freaking out. That part I actually really enjoyed. Like, we got a really great chase scene. Yeah. With Din and Bo-Katan chasing down that battle droid. We got that fun duel between Bo-Katan and Axe at the end. The thing that is not working for me with this season are the celebrity cameos, because they tend to kind of take me out of it. Christopher Lloyd, love seeing Doc Brown. Of course. Love seeing Judge Doom. Of the three, he's the one that works the most, and in my opinion, doesn't really work that great. Maybe if he had a little more time, a little bit more screen real estate, I mean, maybe we could have gotten into his character a little bit more. But as this is an episodic series of television, we don't have a ton of time. Jack Black and LIZZO, Jack Black is a fantastic performer. He is a wonderful actor. I mean, I just spoke glowingly about him as Bowser in the Super Mario Brothers movie. He steals sections of the movie. But anyway, he's fantastic. Him as this sort of like foppish post-imperial planner. It's like it's just ringing a little silly for me. And now I've read, you know, folks online, some people love this. And if you are one of the folks that loved it, fantastic. I would never want to subtract from your enjoyment. Just for me as an audience member, didn't really work. I mean, and also Lizzo is not a good actress. You know, I think when you are playing in sort of a larger than life world like Star Wars, you have to be really, really good to pull this stuff off. And my only experience with her as an actor was in Hustlers. And she wasn't good in that. She's not a good actor. I mean, so, you know, you have Jack Black kind of, and you have her, and it's kind of like she's kind of almost like reciting lines versus actually saying them. So that part didn't really work for me. Again, I thought the action direction of Bryce Dallas Howard, I thought that was really, really good. The whole opening between, you know, the Mon Calamari and Quarren star-crossed lovers, the Mon Calamari, the Montagues and the Quarrens, the Capulets. You know, I was like, oh, that's fun. Like, I don't know if we're ever going to see these two again. But that's fun. I mean, there are aspects of the episode that I thought really worked. I mean, the idea that Axe Woves or Wovis, I don't know how they pronounce it. The fact that you have this group of Mandalorians going around as privateers, I'm like, that's a cool story. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of that. So again, there are things that worked in this episode, but for me overall, it did not.
Yeah, I'm in a tough place, to be honest with you, because I agree. I think all the stuff in the kingdom and the palace was utterly ridiculous. But listen, let's be fair. And I'm going to offer a nuanced analysis on a couple of things. If you like this kind of stuff in your Star Wars, you have every right to like this kind of stuff in your Star Wars. Just as those of us who don't like this kind of stuff in our Star Wars have every right to say that we don't like this kind of stuff in our Star Wars. It doesn't make us any less Star Wars fans. It doesn't mean that our version of Star Wars is objectively better than yours or your version is objectively better than ours. It's just a matter of what you like, right? Some of you like the prequel trilogy. I do not. I don't care how many of you all tell me how good it is. I've rewatched those films many times. There are good moments, but what we saw here is emblematic. It reminds me of some of the worser parts of the prequel trilogy, the stuff in the kingdom and stuff with the Duchess and Bombardier or whatever he wants to say his name is. That kind of stuff really, it's like Dexter Jesser at the fucking diner. I was like, this has no business being in Star Wars, in my opinion, right? That's just my opinion and my belief. It doesn't mean yours is any less valid. You can like this kind of stuff. I got no problem with it. But I have a right to analyze this the way I feel, and it just absolutely killed a lot of the episode. I didn't want to go see them. I didn't want to go back. But the stuff surrounding it I thought was interesting because, look, I think they're making commentary sometimes, and maybe people aren't catching it. There's commentary being made in these shows. These are smart writers, right? Favreau is a smart guy. He knows what he's saying. This idea of democracy, we're the only democratic place on the outer rim, the full democracy, but we're going to capture your ship. We're going to make you sit down. We're going to bring you into the shuttle, and then we're going to make you go meet our leaders. So in essence, you can't freely move around in this supposed democracy that they're taking. And then this idea of being a democracy that accepts everyone for their natural culture, then using that to be a part of this. And also the commentary on Hellgate, which is such an obvious name, Hellgate, but the commentary on him being the villain, but his drive here is he has a warped idea of democracy, and he's the one that's like supporting Dooku and saying that Dooku was unfairly killed by the Jedi Order. Why? Because he believes the fake news about Dooku. This is commentary, okay? So there is a lot actually going on here that I think is fun to break down and analyze. And I really enjoyed the droid stuff. Once again, this idea of the droids being seen as just these worker bees, these things they can use. And so when they turn on them, Hellgate talking about the fact that we've gotten too soft, we're not, we've relied on technology too much. Where have we heard that in our modern conversations? We're not focusing on the things we need to focus on. We'd all fall apart without technology. So again, commentary that's being done here that I think is really smart by Favreau and the stable of writers that are working on it, because I don't think it's just Favreau. And then the stuff inside, when we get to what's going on here with the droids, when they get to the droid bar, the conversations that are being had there, I think are really interesting. So having a droid actually say, like, what they ask of us isn't that much, the humans, in exchange, because they have such short lives. So there's a sense of perspective, right? Whether you like it or not, because you could argue that it, in essence, makes a person being saying like, oh, well, since I'm going to live longer than this person, it's okay that they mistreat me, you know, because the exchange is that I'm going to live longer. So you can have perspectives about this for sure, one way or another. But I like that these concepts were thrown in. But for me, the things I didn't like were the stuff in the kingdom. And I got to be honest with you, Shannon, I didn't like that ending. I thought that ending was kind of unnecessary. Of course, Bo-Katan was going to win. Axe has never been presented as a formidable challenger to anybody. And I don't think Simon is that good of an actor either, to be honest with you, the guy who played Axe. And so the back and forth with them, it was empty to me. It didn't have life to it. And so her winning was just kind of going through the paces. I get it. And then Din's convenient logic here, when he's been holding on to the saber the whole time instead of giving it to her when she legitimately won it, if you really believe that, I thought was convenient story writing that bothered me. So amidst some of the stuff that bothered me at the beginning and the end, really, I guess the stuff in the kingdom as well, but like that, everything else around that I thought was an enjoyable episode. So yeah, I think I agree with you. It's an okay episode. It's not a bad episode. It's an okay episode, but it could have been a fucking great episode if they had chosen to take a little more of a serious tact in the things that they were presenting and approaching with. Any commentary on everything I just said? So I didn't know I was going to go on that long. I apologize.
No, I mean, I actually do think, I think Simon Cassianidis, I actually do like him as an actor.
Right,
but part of that is because I did work with him on something.
Yeah.
And he was just a nice guy. And to say like, well, he's never been presented as a challenge. He's never really been presented as much of a character. I mean, he was just sort of the third Mandalorian.
That's an even better commentary. You're right, Shannon. He has not been presented as a full character.
Yeah. And I think this is a thing. I think the writing this season is a little unfocused. I think you could have picked any one of these interesting subplots and really kind of blown them out a little bit. And I think that would have worked better. I mean, if we get to know Axe more as a character, I think that duel at the end, maybe it is a little more satisfying.
It has weight to it.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole idea, and again, this gets into like, you know, is Christopher Lloyd telling the truth when he's like, well, you know, we voted not to, the citizens voted not to turn the droids off, but the droids are scared of being replaced by humans. It's like, this logic's not really, it's not really adding up. And like overall, this was because I did like that kind of noir middle. I'm kind of like, okay, this is something I'm willing to kind of like, all right, that's fine, whatever. Yeah. But when you really kind of break it down, it's like, so who wants what now? I think there was a way to streamline the story they were telling this season and focus it a little bit more. Now, you know, when Din and Grogu were reunited in Book of Boba Fett, at the time, our hope as an audience is like, okay, they know what they're doing. This seems weird to do this here, but they know what they're doing. Thus far, 3/4 of the way through the season, it's like, maybe you don't. Like maybe the plan that you had, it's not quite being executed as well. Now, again, for folks that are watching this season and loving it, and for folks that love the Book of Boba Fett, I know there are people out there. It wasn't us, but I know there are people out there. If you all are loving it, fantastic. I wish I were in your shoes. It's just not what is being presented. I think one of the downfalls of knowing how the sausage is made is you always start to kind of rearrange things in your head. And that's not to say that, you know, we're right. Like, you know, they could have done the things that we're thinking like, this would have been a stronger choice. It could have been just as much of a mess. Yeah. But, you know, that's what we do is we talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And just to be fair to our third geek buddy here, Michael Vogel, his tweet was Bryce Dallas Howard knows how to Star War. I have spoken. And of course, on our own text chain, I hope I'm not revealing too much, but he was a fan of the episode. So he enjoyed the episode very much. So he said, I loved Mando this week. It's so fucking wild and weird. So that's the commentary we got from Michael Vogel. And Laura Kelly gave this episode a 10 out of 10. So I love Laura. She's at Star Wars Celebration, so there'll be no Jedi Way review this week. But I couldn't disagree with you more. I don't think it was a 10 out of 10. And we would have had that discussion for sure. But Shannon, let's I don't know, it's a weird one to review. So I guess we'll just go through this. So we'll just separate in two spots and then we'll take a break. All right, we started on the ship, as we mentioned, with a captain in a goldfish tank. In essence, they're the Quarren and they hail what they think is an Imperial ship and try to hire them for protection, but they are not. They're Mandalorian. It's Axe and Koska Reeves there, of course, which is Sasha Banks, Mercedes Varnado. Also not that good of an actress, but great to see her be a part of this. They've been hired by Mon Calamari Viceroy to bring back his son, who is in love with the captain. Then some dialogue here between the captain and the son here. No, I'll never let you go. I can't risk it all for a fling. Is this all this was to you? Now, I just started season 4 of Love is Blind, and I feel like I was watching a scene from that in this moment. So anyway, they eventually take him, and he's gone there. And it's interesting. Mercedes Varnado, a.k.a. Sasha Banks, I don't think she has any lines on camera. Like, we hear her, but facially, she doesn't say anything. So interesting decision. But anyway, we go to Bo-Katan, Mandalorian, and Grogu, who find Axe and the fleet. And she knows they won't be easily convinced. The planet we hear is Plazir 15 that they're on. Is, quote, the only remaining democracy in the Outer Rim. And as I said, the first gesture of democracy to take control of Bo-Katan's ship. They're greeted by 2 Imperial droids, one of which is RA-7. They're present, which is they essentially were like the evil version of R2-D2 and C-3PO in essence, at least because we hear they're Imperial droids. Their presence is requested by the leadership of the planetary democracy. Mando is worried they might have to blast their way out. They come upon this celebration with Jack Black and Lizzo. And I think, again, this is commentary. The idea this is a democracy, but the fat cats are living high on the hog there in these opulent buildings. You know, we're doing Succession. It's like the Pierces, right? Talking about, you know, we got to help the common man and diversity and all this kind of thing. And they're living in these fucking mansions. So I love this as the commentary, right? Jack is, as you said, a foppish Captain Bombardier, and Lizzo is the Duchess. We find out Lizzo is part of this royal family that's been on the planet for so long, and she married the Bombardier. And Bombardier is a former Imperial guy who's converted, and he is now having this spot that he has. We hear that they can't have armies, so they have to have the privateers there because it's part of their charter, part of what was voted on. The Duchess and the captain tell them they have some malfunctioned Imperial droids who are assaulting people after they pull them away from whatever brunch or breakfast or dinner they're having. The Duchess and the captain tell them they have, there's some political maneuvering here by Captain Bombardier, who offers to recognize Mandalore as a sovereign planet if Bo-Katan takes control of it, if she does this and helps to get rid of these droids. They tell them to go and talk to the security guy, who is Commissioner Helgate. That is Christopher Lloyd, who explains them the issue with the malfunctioning droids, shows them the examples, which is curious that he would show the examples of what he is doing, Shannon. It just seemed odd as you were talking about the writing here. But to help, they have to go to the Ugnaughts now to get the list of these malfunctioning droids. And when they get down there, they're initially ignored by the Ugnaughts. It's not until Mando references Queel, which, of course, for those of you who know, it's from season 1, Nick Nolte's character there, as his entry point to discuss the issues with the Ugnaughts. And we see Mando do some politicking here, some really smart politicking here. They sit down with them, and the Ugnaughts eventually provide them with a list after some clever negotiating by Mando, and they head to the dock. So let's stop here, Shannon. This entire opening scene, all these opening scenes leading to them heading to the docks, and the noir aspect that we will get into after the break. What did you think about this whole opening and everything that happens leading into this moment?
So I'm kind of split on that opening because in terms of a design, I thought like this is super, super cool that the captain is essentially in this little, tank and, is being fed, goldfish. It made me wonder, is like, does everyone on the bridge have one of these? But I mean, as the tank recedes and she kind of like lands in her captain's chair, I'm like, that's a really, really cool design. Just again, really fun production design. The amount of time that they dedicate to this. Now, this is something again that I learned in Vogel 101 creative screenwriting. With your cold opens like this is like a random cold open, that's perfectly fine. Is there a way to inject it later in the season? Like, is there a way to get a little bit more story real estate out of it? Now it sure seems like those two, we're never going to see those two again. We could, it's possible, but it doesn't seem like we're going to see the, the star-crossed lovers again. It was a fun opening, but also you don't really get to see the breadth of what the Mandalorians can do. I mean, I actually did like that exchange between the Quarren captain and Simon when he's like, "I'm not a criminal. I'm not an Imperial either," and the whole idea that I think it is Sasha Banks that she's pulling the Mon Calamari guy away. He's like, "I thought you were honorable." She's like, "Yep, we are. All it takes is a few credits." I was like, "That's a great line of dialogue." The whole concept of the Mandalorian privateers, I wish we would have seen more of. Going into Bo and Din and Grogu going to the planet, this is another one of those episodes like, Grogu didn't really need to be in this season. He's not really done anything. Maybe something's coming down the line, but overall, like, again, had they not, ghost of stories past, like, had they not reunited them, like if this had been a season where Din was by himself and he gets reunited with Grogu at the end, I'm like, that just would have been, for me, a little more narratively satisfying. Because right now it's like Grogu's cute. Grogu's always cute. He doesn't really serve a story purpose right now.
Is he don't present him as a foundling, and he's not training as a foundling. Yes, going with his dad on these trips is cool and all, but if you present the foundling construct, which you did a couple episodes ago, we've got to stay with the foundling concept, don't we? That he's got to train and learn from the armor and from all the people there. I mean,
I think the implication is that Din is teaching him, but that's something we're inferring. We're not being told. And that's another thing that, like, why did they have to go and speak to Axe and the rest of the Mandalorians face to face? Now, there's a reason. Like, you could have said, Bo could have said, I have to make this case in person. Great, say that. Right. Because right now it's like, why don't you just hail him? Why don't you, you all have these, you have these, hologram communicators. Like, let us know that this is something that has to be done face to face. As they get to this world, you get to see the Imperial droids, and there is this sense of, what is about to happen? And then when we're presented with this sort of opulent extravagance, this I had no issue with. I mean, the whole idea, I'm like, this is fun. It was more just the casting choices of Jack Black and Lizzo, because again, when you are presenting this, it immediately lessens the stakes. And we don't get a sense from the rest of the population that this whole droid thing is a big problem. It's just from Jack Black and Lizzo. And as they're like, let us show you the view. And then they start talking about these droid incidents. When they finally do go meet Christopher Lloyd and he shows them the security footage. And granted, this is, as you said, this is the stuff that he orchestrated. The stuff that we see, it's like a garbage bot haywiring. It's like an assistant bot throwing clothes, something that their person just went shopping. And then you see it's like a C-3PO type droid hop into a cruiser and drive into a wall. Now, with the exception of the driving, the other two, it's like, this doesn't seem that big a deal.
It seems innocuous.
Like, there is a way to heighten the stakes here, to make this a little more like, we don't, like, way more dangerous. Like, we don't know what's going on. Like, because it just doesn't seem that serious a problem to have your garbage bot kind of not put the garbage in correctly. Like, we've all seen YouTube videos of garbage trucks malfunctioning. And it's like, I don't think we need Din Djarin to go in and blast it. Them going to talk to the Ugnaughts, that was a part I really liked. I was like, this is fun. Like, you like that Din, they're addressing this other culture, and the way Din knows how to talk to them. Like, all that was super, super fun. That whole middle section is great. We're stopping at the Ugnaughts.
We're stopping at the Ugnaughts. We'll get to
that whole Ugnaught thing. I mean, I love that Bo-Katan puts on a smile and is trying to talk to these, these diminutive, little mechanics, and they're just giving her nothing. A lot of folks have kind of bagged on KATEE SACKHOFF.
Really?
And it's like, and I'm like, I don't think she's the best performer. But I think for what she's having to do, what is being asked of her, I'm like, I think she's doing perfectly fine. So, but watching her having to put on that smile, I'm like, this is funny because this is so not her.
You're right. It's not a natural thing. I mean, I'm confused why people were bagging on KATEE. KATEE's been one of the highlights of the season, in my opinion. I think she's done an incredible job considering some of the failings that we've seen in certain episodes this entire season. So I'm kind of, because if you need any evidence, go and watch her in fucking Battlestar Galactica, or go and watch her in, was it Pitch Black, or was it the third one that she was in? I forget. Whichever one she was in, she was badass in that series. So anyway, all right. So here's my thoughts real quick. Yeah, the opening was weird. I don't need, it's that kind of stuff I don't need. I get it. You all want to laugh and enjoy it. It's fine. Knock yourselves out. Fine, it's there. It's fine. It's cool. It's whatever. But you're right. It would have been nice to see the Mandalorians do something other than negotiate, then show up and take the kid. Like, fight. Do something that would make it, you show even more of a badass that these Mandalorians are. Because we got the recap stuff at the beginning of this episode, showing us the stuff from season 2 to remind us. Well, we wouldn't even need that if we could show the stuff here to remind us how much of a badass this fleet of Mandalorians are, these people that are serving here. So anyway, so it's fine, whatever. But then we get the Bo-Katan, Mandalore, and Grogu, and this is, yeah, you're right, Shannon. I don't understand Grogu's role in this, because even when they get to the Duchess situation, he just flips over, is immediately under her control, and then he just not control, but like he's just totally attached to her for the rest of the episode. So he doesn't even go on any of the mission to quote unquote learn what he's supposed to be learning as a foundling. What they did was default to the fact that let's put Grogu with LIZZO, who everybody loves right now, and take advantage of that. And that's bad storytelling. That is bad storytelling. There's no logic that Grogu is supposed to sit there like a pet and hang out with her. And worst of all, which we'll get to, help her cheat to win. So anyway, all right, anyway, but anyway, they won't be easily, she knows that they won't be easily convinced. So I think that's why she wants to go and do it face to face. But, you know, Bo's always got her reasons for doing shit. Whether you agree with the reasons or not are always the issues, for sure. But yeah, as I mentioned, the democracy stuff was interesting. And I like that we get a little bit of that feeling of like there's a sense of dread, even though there's supposedly this democracy. But it also shows you how the New Republic really is just putting it together piecemeal on the fly. All these things are falling through the cracks. All these planets are able to declare what they are, but still trying to work with some of the Imperial stuff and repurposing these droids. But we get to the opulence of that place, and yeah, it's interesting. And I'll say, and I think we're allowed to say this, and I tweeted this. There are plenty of actors who think they are good musicians, and they're not, but they get the opportunity to be. So look, I know everyone's suffering. I know Bruce Willis is suffering. He's terrible. Okay. There's a lot of actors who are terrible musicians. Okay. Or terrible singers or terrible performers, but they have bands, you know, whatever. But like there are plenty of musicians who think they're actors and terrible. Would you like me to show you Mick Jagger and Free Jack? He is just not, there's samples. Okay. And it's okay to point it out. Do you know what I'm saying? We're not being haters. I love LIZZO. I love her music. I think what she stands for, represents, is awesome. My girlfriend and I watched her reality show on Prime Video, 100% supporting LIZZO. But my job as a reviewer and critic is to analyze what I'm seeing. And I agree with you, Shannon. A better actress knows how to play the levels of the stuff that is happening in this scene. The irony of the opulence, the fact that they feel the fact that they have to walk them away from these rich people at the table. What does that mean? There is something that there are levels here that could have been played that insinuates something more about what is happening. LIZZO's an awesome energy and a great presence. I'm never going to deny that. And I fully support her existence in our pop culture sphere. But as an actress, this is a wasted opportunity for a better actress to come in. And it's kind of insulting for those of us who are actors. Everybody thinks it's easy and they can do it. But then when it's their job, when they're people who don't act and do other jobs, bring someone in with almost no experience to think they can do your job at that level. It's insulting. So acting is the same thing. So when it's this way, I get real frustrated by it. And people are like, oh, you know, oh, it's a big deal. It is to people who love and care about the craft. We actually do care. And I know you're like craft with an episode like this, but what Jack Black is doing, I like what Jack Black is doing, because you can tell there's something else under here. Jack is hinting at it. It's not obvious. But the fact that he's a former Imperial guy and he's doing all these things and he's being this big thing and he's doing all, there's something more here. And I feel like he's playing a little bit of the Imperial bubbling underneath. He's still an Imperial guy, and he may be one of these guys that figured out who to be for whoever is in charge so he can survive and stay alive. The fact that he has been able to marry one of the, like the Duchess of the planet, that takes a certain kind of skill to go from former Imperial guy to being married to the Duchess of the planet, which means he hungers for power. So there's a little element of that when you're watching the interaction. So like I said, Jack is clearly a way better actor than Lizzo and plays those just hits on those little levels in certain interactions when you're watching him. So just in my opinion, that's what I see.
But I would say, as we were both big fans of Andor, and granted, this is a very different show. The tone, it's different.
Yeah.
I think you look at some of the opulence and foppishness that some of the ISB officers had, and I'm like,
100%.
That would have been interesting. Like, could Jack Black do that? Maybe. Not in its current form. But I would have been more interested to see that, like see someone who was a former Imperial who was like, can we really trust this guy?
Right.
Like, I think that makes it a little more interesting. But The Mandalorian aims for a younger audience and might not have been as accessible. So maybe what they did was correct. Just my personal tastes, I think that would have made for a more interesting dynamic.
But I also think, and look, I take your point. I'm sure a lot of people probably feel the way you do, but you can't tell me that it aims for a younger audience. And we have 2 episodes ago, a woman essentially scrambling a dude's brain by electroshock therapy. That's not for kids. That's a fucking R-rated move, man. That's a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest move. And that's a scary thing to see, especially when he's been tricked the whole time and then turned the thing up to 11 and his brain is absolutely scrambled. So I don't know. I think there are things they get away with by claiming it's kid stuff when it's convenient and then not kid stuff when it's convenient. Like, the prequel trilogy it's all for kids. How many of them understand the Trade Route Federation bullshit? I just, to me, it's just like, come on, you can't have it both ways. So,
well, we didn't say it was well done.
Right, fair point. But of course, I respect your point, brother, and anybody else who feels the same way you do. All right, let's take a break. We'll jump into the back half of the episode, which I think is Shannon's favorite part of the episodes. Right after this. All right. So they head to the docks. They speak to Shannon, correct me. Is this the first time we've seen a live action battle droid, or am I?
Well, I mean, the prequel trilogy.
Oh, well, fair point. I'm sorry. In Mandalorian. I'm sorry. I meant in the Mandalorian. I was wondering if there's an episode where we had seen a battle droid, so maybe not. But this is the first time
I don't recall. I think
this is the first time we've seen a live action battle droid in the Mandalorian. So I just was like, kind of interested. I was looking back in my mind to see if there's any of the other episodes. Anyway, I loved it here. Great back and forth between them. He's like, I did all the required thing. I did the upkeep and the maintenance. And Mando, still not 100% over the droid thing, starts to kick these loaded droids until one reacts and then takes off. And there's an action sequence where him and Bo chase it through the city, all around the city, in this cool, like, kind of Blade Runner-esque type city. Also vibes of what we saw the city in the Kenobi series with Moses Ingram chasing him down in that city. But there's an action too. But then Mando and Bo-Katan eventually subdue it by Mando jumping through the window, of course. Gotta be demonstrative in what he's doing. They take it down. Bo-Katan finds a spark pad that says the resistor. There's an address. They find the bar. She says, look, let me take it from here. You're a little emotional about these droids. They go into the droid bar, and like something out of a movie, the music just stops. And they all stare at them walking in. And Mando even says, I don't think they like our kind here. And so they head over to the bartender, who looks like Daft Punk, and they question him. Bo-Katan tries a softer approach. And then Mando goes full waterboarder with all his threats. Bo reasons with him to calm down, and the bartender says they want to help because they could be scrapped and even even replaced by humans, which is interesting because they were the battle droids replaced by human stormtroopers, right? And down the road. So he even speaks highly of helping humans. We hear that the droids are served Nepenthe, which is a lubricant that protects against mechanical wear while covers the programming patches that happen when the mainframe changes. They find out that the malfunctioning droids drank from the same batch of Nepenthe. They find the sub, and then they go to the scientist who pulls out that droid that they had taken down, and or maybe she's a medical examiner. I don't know what she is, but she's
the droid coroner.
The droid coroner, basically. Yeah, the DC. I almost want to have her Hawaiian shirt almost and like eating a sandwich or something. But anyway, they find these subatomic particles, and one of the droids comes to life that's hanging there that was, as it comes like tries to kill them, and Mando uses the Darksaber to kill it, just to let you know he has the Darksaber, to put a little plant in your mind. The scientist does some more investigating and finds that these things are nano droids, and they find that it has a chain code, and both things they can find its point of origin, and they find out that it was these droids were originally manufactured by the Techno Union. They arrived through a request by the security office, which apparently is illegal according to the charter, and they were ordered by an individual, and that individual is Commissioner Hellgate. They end up going to Hellgate. They confront him. He flips out, threatening to turn all the droids into battle droids, while he's ranting and raving about not giving into the Republic or the Empire and how he supports democracy. And Dooku was cut down by the Jedi Order in his prime. He is electrocuted by Bo. We go back to the court, and Grogu helps the Duchess cheat to win in whatever game they're playing. They bring Hellgate into the Duchess and Bombardier. Hellgate offers his apologies and goes after Bombardier, calls him out, says, you know, things have changed on the planet since you came here, your former Imperial guy, the things you've done, a little more. So hinting there. The Duchess expresses her disappointment because apparently he has served her family well for many decades, but she banishes him to this moon. He walks away calmly. Then the Duchess gives the key to the city to Bo, says she's always welcome there. She knights Grogu, so now he's a knight, so he's Sir Grogu. And they head to go see Axe and the Mandalorians. Axe and Bo-Katan have a fight to see who's going to be the leader of the crew, because he calls her out for not having the dark saber. He also calls out Mando in a little bit of saying he's not a pureblood, which is an interesting angle to be taking. Bo wins, but Axe still won't give in to her because Mando has the blade. She defends him, as I said. Then she refuses. Then Mando says, well, then I'll just give her the Darksaber. She deserves it more than I do. She refuses the gift, even though it's well-intentioned. Then he lays out the reason why she's the rightful holder of it. She defeated the thing that defeated him, who had taken the blade from him. So she is the rightful holder of the blade. And they all take a moment, look at each other, go, all right, yeah, that makes sense. Sure, fine. And then suddenly it's cool for her to have the blade. And we have that badass moment of her turning the Darksaber on. And we go to black. So Shannon, your thoughts on these sequences here leading all the way to the end?
I mean, love everything on the loading docks. How Mando, it reminds me of, you know, seeing the videos from Boston Robotics when you see
100%
pushing the robots,
100%.
And then like whatever comedian added the Boston VO. Like, I'm waiting for that to happen with this episode. But you see the power that a battle droid does actually have when he kind of, you know, backhands Mando. That whole chase, like watching a battle droid run, I'm like, this is a blast. Like, this is so much fun. And then watching how Bo especially is able to use her jetpack in this chase, not like flying, but like, I got to jump over this, bang, bang, bang. Like that was just, to me, that was just like, oh, this is fun Star Wars. The moment that he crashes through the window and tackles. I love the constable drones that come out and do the holographic caution tape. I was like, that's, as a design choice, I'm like, that's a lot of fun. And then when they find the spark pad, which, you know, if you're a noir fan, someone always finds a matchbook with the name of a place on it. I was like, oh, that's a lot of fun. Now, I do think they dropped the ball a little bit on the droid bar, because it was literally like, well, what does a droid bar look like? It's like, well, it's a bar with droids. I'm like, you could have made, and again, I think if you're going for more that darker Andor audience, I'm like, I think you can get really Asimov here. And as you walk in, and it's like, they're not talking, like they don't need to talk, like they're hooked with their programming. It's just them sitting. And then when they come in, you see them all. Like, I think that would be, as just a creative choice, I'm like, I think that would have been way creepier.
Yeah.
As they walk in, and it is absolutely quiet.
Which we see that sometimes in those films with the Yakuza. When they walk in, they're all quiet, and the Yakuza just kind of look.
Yeah.
And they go back and they're silent. There's a sense of terror or dread when they all just kind of look and then look back. Yeah, good point, Shin. Yeah.
But again, they literally made it a droid bar.
Yeah.
I did like the scene between the bartender and Bo and Din when the droid is explaining, like, look, this is what, you know, we don't want to be replaced.
Yeah.
You know, we're really worried about this. Love the droid corner. I was like, this is a lot of fun. The moment that she said the Techno Union, it was like, oh, okay, so this is some separatist stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. When they do find out it's Christopher Lloyd, and yeah, you know, again, I love Christopher Lloyd. Doc Brown, Judge Doom, everything that he's done, Professor Plum and Clue. The moment that he's like, I'll hit this switch and they'll all become battle droids. I was like, okay. So again, the stakes are lessened because it's funny.
This big red button, this big red glowing button. If I hit this thing, I'll kill all you tunes.
Put him in the dip. You know, again, it was just it's not a high stakes sequence. There's not a high level of threat there. You know, the idea that Grogu is helping the Duchess cheat, you can be like, well, I guess he's a kid.
Yeah,
doesn't know any better. He was eating some lady's baby eggs
the
last season.
That's true.
The whole, I think the dialogue that Christopher Lloyd did give when he's just like, you know, I'm a fan of democracy, and like, I didn't bow to the corrupt republic. I didn't bow to the empire. I'm not bowing to these people. Like, I think again, what he is saying, the message is good in the dish that it's being presented. That has been a little silly and a little opulent. Yeah. It doesn't quite carry over. And when Lizzo says that he has to go, you know, he has to go live on exile on like the moon or whatever, and you say, oh, like again, all I'm seeing is Doc Brown. When they do go to meet the Mandalorians, the duel that happens was great, and the fact that he refers to Din as a heretic, he's like, you know, he's a heretic with this, you know, with our that's ours. Like, you know, he doesn't have a drop of Mandalorian blood, and he's got our thing. Like, that ain't cool. I do agree with you. The reasoning that maybe Din just hadn't put it together until right then. The whole idea that he was like, well, actually, it would be hers. So I'm going with the fact that Din hasn't actually given this a lot of thought.
Okay.
But I did like the duel.
That's fair.
There's a lot going on. Living in a cave, crocky tortoise.
I got dad brain. You know, I forgot.
Yeah, but I did think the Mandalorian duel was fun. Mandalorian.
Oh no! Come on.
But I thought that was fun. That was creative. Yeah, and the shot of her, you know, turning on the Darksaber as, you know, this sort of, you know, perceived leader of Mandalore, not just from the covert, but also with this group of privateers who, you know, as Sasha Banks said, their loyalty, all it takes is a few credits. So, you know, I thought that was a nice shot, but again, I think if we had been able to devote a little bit more time to the privateers, to kind of get an idea of where their heads collectively are. Because again, we don't know Axe as a character that well. We just know that he's now leading. But it was a nice shot.
There you go. But it was a nice shot. You're right. And you know, and there's something powerful about a female director directing a powerful female character to have this kind of powerful moment to take over a planet. So, you know, I get it. It carries weight for sure. Yeah, I dug the noir aspects of this also as a noir fan as I am. And you're right. I didn't even make that connection that the pad could be like a matchbox, you know, like Lazy Sal's or something. He's got to go and show up like in Untouchables, or you know, it finds the Racine address in the matchbox. Yeah, exactly. So you got that element too. That's a nice pickup there, Shannon. I didn't catch that, but that was cool. Yeah, and the droid bar stuff, and it was really interesting to have the bartender, the Daft Punk bartender, be like, you know, we actually care about the humans. Like, they only ask so little of us, because probably for a droid, what they're supposed to do for human beings is so nothing to their programming. It's so they're so far advanced from humans that it's not that big a deal to them. So having a little sympathy, I thought, was a surprising angle to take. But it was scary to see how fast he clicked through the things before he put it up and showed. I was like, oh, That's why I fear fucking robots and AI and all that shit, man, because they will absolutely kill us all. Anyway, but the Bo and Mando stuff, I mean, those two are just great together. The energy between Pedro and KATE works so well for me. I enjoy them in anything that they're doing together because they are two different approaches. Hers is a little more, she's learned from her more aggressive, emotional, earlier approach to things. She's learned, right? So her approach is a little more kinder, like with the Ugnaughts, with the bartender. She wants to be a little more like conversational, get them to a point where they understand where she's coming from. Mando is more just like to the point because he's been out there bounty hunting. So for him, it's a waste of time to have conversations. Give me what I need. So two different approaches here. That does end up working because the droid gives him the stuff about the nepenthe. And I've heard that word before, and I can't remember what movie or show I heard it nepenthe before, but I have heard that word before. But anyway, the idea of it being connected to Hellgate was interesting. I think we should have had more with Hellgate, Shannon. I feel like writing-wise, we should have seen him trying to, or something, try to stop them from constantly being able to do it. I know he turns on the droid or whatever, but there's just, I felt that we could have gotten more from him interfering in the investigation so that when they eventually get to him, he is prepared. And when they come through the door, he knows that they figured it out. I mean, if he's monitoring them and watching them and he turned that droid on, maybe possibly to turn on them, then I think he would have been aware of them coming up. So having even like a devilish look to the right as they come through the door, so he's ready to go. In fact, if he's the one that initiates the confrontation rather than them, I think would have given him more power in the situation, more strength in that situation. That would have been interesting for the stakes in the back and forth, and certainly not making a big old fucking red button, for God's sake. So well, that was a little weird for me. But there was, you know, the idea of nano droids, all this kind of stuff. I like the idea of the techno union stuff, the separatist stuff. Him saying it's a pejorative term, I thought was interesting as well. So him kind of bringing that up was a nice situation. But yeah, I mean, this when we get to the Duchess stuff, it's all fine and gives the key and all of that. But there's an element here in the conversation between Hellgate and Bombardier. He says, like, you've changed things. The world's not the same. The planet's not the same. So depending on what side you're on in that argument, you can see the logic in both, right? Someone being afraid of change and another person being like, things have to change if we're going to be a better society. And there's always people who are not going to change. And it's a mirror, a little bit of a microcosm of what's going on with the New Republic, changing stuff that the Empire did. There are a lot of people still within the galaxy who were fine with how the Empire was running things. Like we've said, the trains ran on time. With the New Republic in charge, all of it is shit. It's like when the wall came down in the Soviet Union. When communism disappeared, it was a fucking free-for-all. And there were many reports about how crime lords were taking over sections of Russia, or the USSR would have been the former USSR in Russia, and were running things as if they were their own senator fiefdoms or what have you. So it happens. And if you don't plan ahead for the deconstruction of a former government system, you're going to get caught up in all this kind of stuff. So I like that there's a little bit of that. But yeah, him going like, oh, and being led away was a little weird. Oh, no. He was like Ignatowski. What does yellow mean? But then we get to this fight here. And yeah, there should have been much more with Axe. We should have checked in. I mean, the fact they only show up at the beginning and at the end was so weird. Like, why isn't there interactions? Why do we have Axe and Koska having conversations about, him and Reeves having conversations about the situation, about what they're doing, about what their plan next is, about what their next mission is, about, are they frustrated with the fact that they're living off these missions that they're going on? Are they like, do they feel like they're not really being Mandalorians? So if you have a little bit of conflict there, when Bo-Katan shows up, you can sense that maybe it's the right time for her to show up because there's questions about what they're doing with their lives. So that when she retakes it over, it almost feels like, okay, now we've got some direction. We're getting back in the fight. We're going to take over Mandalore, right? So I think there could have been something more where we had gotten more with those actors. And maybe there was stuff cut. I don't know. But in the end, the fight to me was a little like, okay, fine, sure. But the moment was great, what it led to. I just think there should have been more weight in the stakes of the conversation and in the laying out and fleshing out of these characters, so we could feel that the victory had much more resonance to it than it did when I was watching, at least for me. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And the whole thing about getting more time with Christopher Lloyd, I mean, when you look at like a Law and Order episode, you know, they're not having to, you know, wrap up the, you know, who's going to lead Mandalore at the end, and they're not having, you know, their cold open is a little more related to the thing that's going to happen. The whole idea of like a Bo and Din procedural, I kind of love that. I was like, that's a great, that's a cool idea. Like, I love the fact that, you know, one part of the duo, we see their face, the other we don't. Like, that's the frustrating thing with the writing this season, is you see these really, really good ideas that if they were to pick one and focus on that versus all, you know, there's all this stuff, but when you're only getting a little bit of everything, it's never quite a satisfying meal.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. You're right, because I think we all have to come to the terms that this season is all about Bo-Katan. And so the Mandalorian doesn't necessarily mean Din Djarin. It's not called the Din Djarin show. It's been the Din Djarin show for 2 seasons, but now it's clearly Bo-Katan show this season. Or as some people have suggested, the Mandalorian is Grogu, but clearly not, because he's not like training and all of that. So there's just, it's clearly we've got to accept that this is Bo-Katan season and what it's going to lead to. And they're launching Ahsoka off of this. And maybe next season it'll be back to Mando and Grogu. So we will see.
Well, and you know, I do wonder with Dave Filoni, what it seems, and you know, I might be wrong, and folks, if I am, I know you'll correct me. It seems like Dave Filoni probably was not as involved in this season as he has been in the past, because he's been on Ahsoka. So and that's not to say that Dave Filoni is the solve all for everything, but I do wonder, because the first and second season, especially the second season, was so good. And it did have that kind of adventure of the week feel, but they always got someplace. Right now, it seems like, okay, what is the end point of this journey? Is it they're bringing the Mandalorian privateers to Concordia, and now they're going to go retake Mandalore. Which that was another thing. Like, we're going to retake the planet. Like, from who? You know, it's just that you know, and you know, the kind of mutant creatures, and like it's just it's a little unclear where we're going, and I do wonder if part of that lack of focus has to do with the perceived absence of Filoni.
Good points on Shannon, for sure. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review for this episode. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with us. We appreciate it madly. I'm sure our missing geek buddy will have plenty to say as he listens to our episode, as he walks his dog and yelling at us from his headphones. Shannon, what do we have to tell the fine folks who are watching or listening to us?
Yeah, if you'd like to follow us on social media, on Twitter, it's @geek_buddies. On Instagram, @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media and tell me how wrong I am, on Twitter, it's @Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you love this episode, follow @MKToon, because Vogel was a fan. If you're more like me, follow Johnny over at the Rocha Says.
100%. And what else? Oh, yeah. And please remember to subscribe to the podcast feed. Guys, the Geek Buddies is a podcast feed. Sometimes y'all watch us and you want to go back and listen to stuff. You don't have to turn on YouTube. Go and subscribe. Wherever you download podcasts, you can do that and find us there. We are our own feed. Please remember to leave a star rating. Give us 5 stars. We'd appreciate that. And leave a review. Always leave a review when you discover it. We would appreciate it. If you want to go back every few months and leave a review, that would help us move up as well in the rankings there on the numerous podcast platforms that we are on. You know, there's no more Carbon Health, even though you see the graphic up there. You know, they're fine people if you want to still go and hang out with them or whatever. But we will talk to you. Oh, yeah, that's it from us. So y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. Don't forget our live show where our compatriot will be back, and he might have some things to say about it on this episode, rather, on the live show, 11 a.m. PT tomorrow. That's Friday here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Until then, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. And we'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode of the
Geek. Didn't have your phone on silent. Buddies!
Hey!